Good morning, everybody, and happy Cinco de Mayo. We have a lot of things to get to, so let's get started. This morning, we're going to do what we do here actually quite often, is we link war with money. And of course, the big news last week was all about this deal with Ukraine and natural resources in exchange for military help. And everybody's been talking about this. Well, I've been kind of digging into this deal, and I'm not sure it is what we think it is. And I've got some notes here just to make sure I don't get off track. First, Zelensky didn't sign this agreement. This agreement was signed by the Minister of the Economy, Yulia Svidenko. Signed the agreement. I'm not sure she has the legal authority to sign this agreement. Plus, it's got to get through the Ukrainian parliament, which it hasn't done yet. And from what I can tell here, the US is going to receive preferential rights to these natural resources, but it looks to me, it looks more like an investment fund than a true arms for natural resources agreement. And some readings of this say we won't get any money back on this for at least 10 years because a lot of this money has to go back into rebuilding Ukraine. Plus, it's difficult to find in here our true commitment to arms to support the war. It doesn't look like there's anything binding in there. And you kind of put all this together and go, what is this all about? And are we really just trying to distance ourselves from this war? Because just late last week, we said we are no longer going to serve as intermediaries, the United States, meaning us, between Ukraine and Russia. But Russia isn't going to acknowledge Zelensky's authority because they say he's not a legitimate leader because he hasn't had an election over the last year. Anyway, the point of this, I can't see any peace deal in this in the offing now. It seems like the Ukraine war is going to keep going on. I can't even find a way where we're going to be able to get ceasefires out of this deal. And what it seems to me is maybe we're going to continue to drip feed, along with the European Union, more arms to Ukraine. And adding to this kind of theory I've got here, Zelensky threatened, this would be later this week, to send missiles into Red Square during this big May 9th event where they're going to celebrate the end of World War II against the Nazis, and they're going to be dignitaries from all these countries all over the world. Zelensky wants to send drones there. That doesn't sound like peace to me. Meanwhile, Ukraine is mobilizing up to 200,000 more men, and that mostly men. They're going to recruit 60-year-olds and up. That's kind of interesting. Now, they'll probably be doing desk work still, and they've lowered the recruiting age down to 18 now. What does this mean? Again, the war will likely continue to drag on. So let's then move to war in the Middle East, and we are going to tie this to money. Just hang with me here, and I'll do this faster. Last week started with that massive explosion at that port in Iran. You didn't hear much about that. Iran said it was an accident, but now it might have been. They said that because they didn't want to admit Israel had infiltrated. We don't know. All I know is when you get a big explosion on the Gulf or the Strait of Hormuz, it's probably meaning oil prices will be going up here. Next, we've got, well, this cry for war from President Trump against Iran. Here was a tweet. Iran has played the innocent victim of rogue terrorists from which they've lost control. He's talking about the Yemenis firing the missiles, at the tankers. And he says, basically, he blames Iran. The shots fired, it's all under from the leadership of Iran. Iran will be held responsible, excuse me, and suffer the consequences. And those consequences will be dire. Well, then Secretary of Defense Hegseth echoed the same sentiments. And then last Friday, what did we see? We just put additional sanctions on Iranian oil, where if anyone buys Iranian oil, they can't do business with the United States. It seems to me we're setting the stage for another war there. And then we'll move on real quickly. What's going on with India and Pakistan? That kind of came out of nowhere. I think we referenced this a couple of weeks ago, but if not, here's some headlines. India orders all Pakistan citizens to leave the country. Pakistan retaliates against India, talks of use of force. India cuts off fresh water to Pakistan. Pakistan announces missile test off the Karachi coast amid fallout, India monitoring closely. And just late last week, India's prime minister gives full military permission to strike Pakistan. All right, so why do we bring up war and money? Because wars are natural resource intensive. You need energy for war. You need natural resources. You need all kinds of things to arm armies, navies, air forces. And wars destroy wealth. Usually, wealth moves. But in war, it's different. When wealth is destroyed, it's again natural resource intensive to rebuild a society. So, this is bad news for the world going on right now. For your investments, it likely means that the tailwinds will be with you. Again, Walt and I can't change any of this. What we can do is try to protect your assets. And that's our objective that we try to relay to you every week. So with that, I will turn it over to Walt.